What's up, guys? UFC Apex 4, I think that's what they're calling it now, just wrapped up, and it was an amazing card. Just like the last 4 previous cards, this one delivered just as much, if not more. And before I get into that main event, which is one of the best fights of all time, in my opinion already, the best fight of 2020, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor for this video, MedGradeSupplies.com. They're doing an amazing thing, helping to protect everybody with great products from masks to hand sanitizers at amazing prices that you don't normally see on other sites, doing it themselves, and it's for an amazing cause during this whole crazy situation we have these days with now reported spikes of the coronavirus and stuff. They're trying to keep everybody safe at a very affordable cost, and they are donating PPE kits, personal protective equipment to less fortunate kids as well. So guys, it's for an amazing cause. The link is going to be in the description box, and they also are going to have a custom Weasel mask that you guys can purchase as well, which is actually really cool of them. And you guys can also use the promo code WEASEL10, that's WEASLE10, to get 10% off of all products, just for you guys. Again, it's medgradesupplies.com, link is in the description below. Now, right to that main event, Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker. My opinion, the greatest fight of 2020. Yes, I think it's better than Zhang Weili versus Joanna, 100%, because even though Zhang Weili versus Joanna was very action-packed and a lot of good striking back and forth, the power was a little bit different in this one. The combinations these two landed on each other were some of the most terrifying combinations I've ever seen, and we're talking about 7-punch combinations, like trading on each other. It's insane to see, with also close submission victories, you can say, for Dustin Poirier. Dan Hooker taking down Poirier, which I didn't expect at all. Really good kicks to the legs, really good body work from Dan Hooker, but the shots to the head were just adding on a bit too much damage. Hooker was consistently catching Poirier with that jab, because something I noticed about Poirier is when he's moving forward and trying to land those long stretch combinations, he doesn't move his head anywhere. It's always in the center, and that leaves him open for that long counter jab from Dan Hooker, and that jab consistently was pushing Poirier away, disrupting anything he was trying to do as an aggressor. And at times it would push him up against the cage, and from there Dan Hooker would land leg kicks and go to the body a lot. But here's the thing, those body shots were really only working for the first 2 rounds, because as he's throwing these body shots, Dustin Poirier starts landing to the head, and trading body for head is usually not good for the guy throwing at the body, right? It's not good for Dan Hooker, and he took too much damage too quickly. And that's why you start to see after that second round, Dan Hooker stopped going to the body as much, and he took horrendous damage. He wasn't recovering the same. Now, this can also be due to the fact that Dustin Poirier has gone 5 rounds before, right? He has a 5-round experience, which doesn't only help your cardio for 5 rounds, it also helps your recovery between the 4th and 5th round and the 3rd and 4th round. But I would have to say, man, the head damage that Dan Hooker took after the 1st and 2nd rounds just accumulated too much to the point where he couldn't recover that well. He has an insane chin. I don't know what's with all these fighters fighting at the apex. It's like their chins get stronger, but the guy took punches that would knock out anybody. I mean, the combinations he took were too much. I mean, they were too much. Dan Hooker's taking way too much damage in his career. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, this Dustin Poirier fight was too much. He took a lot of damage against Paul Felder and a lot of damage against Usman Barboza. Those are just 3 fights, and although he has a lot of fights in his professional career, he's still pretty young. And I believe this fight was like the one that showed everybody, okay, Dan Hooker's probably not one of the elite lightweights, like a Tony Ferguson, like a Khabib, like Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, and Justin Gaethje, right? He's not one of those 5 guys yet. And this fight kind of sealed it for me that he probably won't make the strides to become a top-tier fighter in this lightweight division, but that's no knock on him. There's a reason the lightweight division is the most stacked division of the UFC, because the top 5 guys in this division is probably the strongest list of top 5 out of any division. And he's just right outside of that with guys like Paul Felder and stuff, you know? And I am very, very impressed with Dan Hooker, because I did not expect him to perform as good as he did. I did not expect him to have the first round that he did. He stunned Dustin Poirier a few times in that round and he put it on him. I didn't expect that from him, and I did not expect him to take him to the ground and almost get his back a few times. Did way better than I thought. I thought Dustin Poirier was going to win the majority of the fight, the vast majority of the fight, and actually get a finish in the mid-rounds where Dan Hooker couldn't keep up with the pace and keep up with the damage. He took the damage that I thought he probably would have taken. I didn't think Dustin Poirier would take the damage that he did, but also the thing I did not expect Dan Hooker to be in the fight the entire 5 rounds, suffering the way he did, you know? So, you know, Dustin Poirier is moving forward with head not moving anywhere, but Dan Hooker just doesn't keep his hands up, you know, especially when he's attacking. When he's throwing his hands, he doesn't even throw them high enough. I understand he's fighting a shorter fighter and he's going to have to bring his hands a little bit lower to connect to the head, but even still, his shoulders are never really that high up when he's throwing these strikes, especially when he's going to the body and stuff, right? He's kind of keeping his chin up high and throwing uppercuts and hooks to the body really low. His chin is completely exposed, and that's why he was getting caught so easily in those exchanges. So it's a great performance from Dustin Poirier, man. He just showed belt belongs to fight these top guys. Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, Conor, Khabib. Those are the guys he should be fighting from now on. And I would really like to see him fight Conor McGregor. I'd like to see him fight Tony Ferguson. Either is good for me, but the one I really would like to see more is probably the Conor fight. I mean, all three of them can fight each other and it'd be amazing, and I wouldn't complain about any of them, but him versus Conor does something else for me. It's a little bit more special, and it's a rematch. I would really like to see how Conor would perform against a guy as well-rounded as Dustin Poirier, but he says he's retired, so I'm going to treat it as that. Dustin Poirier versus Tony Ferguson if Conor is indeed retired. And this could be the perfect opportunity to do Dan Hooker versus Charles Oliveira, because Charles Oliveira wants to fight. Right, he's been out for a little bit. He's looking for a fight. He wanted the Tony Ferguson fight, but I think Tony turned him down. Dan Hooker's number 5. He might drop to number 6. Who knows if they're going to exchange with Paul Felder. But here's the thing. Paul Felder, Dan Hooker, and Charles Oliveira are number 5, 6, and 7. Any of those three can fight each other. But the thing is, Dan Hooker defeated Paul Felder in a very controversial fight. Paul Felder defeated Charles Oliveira a long time ago. But Oliveira and Hooker never fought each other. So I could see any of those three happening. The one I like to see the most, because it's a fresh matchup, I like to see Oliveira versus Paul Felder, but any of them do very well for me. I like all of them. And then we go to Mike Perry defeat Mickey Gall by decision 29-28. I thought it was 30-27, but I could see a 29-28 for sure. Mike Perry, in the first round, I was a little bit scared for Mike Perry. I was a little bit worried about him because he looked slow. He didn't attempt a lot of things. He didn't try a whole lot like I'm used to seeing him, you know? But then when the second round came, I noticed, okay, this guy's just pacing himself. He's not trying to go crazy and blow his wad. And that's very intelligent from Mike Perry. That's something he doesn't normally do that much. And him taking a patient, pacing approach is very good. And he tried to deliver a lot of power shots. I like to see him throw a lot more jabs, but the power shots eventually were able to land. He landed that one right straight over the shoulder of Mickey Gall, because Mickey Gall, when he's throwing his jab, he's leaning to his right a lot, and that lowers the level of the shoulder, you know, so it's easier to get around it. If he stayed up tall and threw the jab and extended it and lifted his shoulder up, there's no way Mike Perry's gonna be able to land that right hand the way he was. And Mike Perry did almost finish him, I think it was in the third round, on the ground, when he was landing those ground pound shots. Now, they both impressed me. Mike Perry impressed me with his grappling, and Mickey Gall impressed me with his striking, because Mickey Gall was catching with check left hooks, counter right hooks on the inside, and some really good counter left body kicks as Mike Perry was trying to make his way in. So that's some good progress for Mickey Gall, but he got dealt with on the ground. That was the most shocking thing in the entire fight. Other than the corner for Mike Perry actually working for him, the ground exchanges were almost entirely in Mike Perry's favor. I understand Mike Perry's a purple belt and Mickey Gall's a black belt, but here's the difference. It is MMA, there's ground and pound involved, and also they're taking head strikes on the feet before they get to the ground, so that changes a lot. Mike Perry's also trained with Jacare Souza for a pretty long time. So even though he's a purple belt, he's a purple belt who was learning from Jacare and learning from the guys who also work with Jacare. That's some different level of grappling training, and he made very little mistakes, right? He got his back, he attempted some submissions, he had amazing control at top. He seemed to be the much stronger guy. I mean, the strength difference was very notable when Mickey Gall grabbed into a headlock and he tried to snap down Mike Perry, and Mike Perry didn't go anywhere. He barely even bent him over with it. That showed to me, okay, Mike Perry is way stronger than Mickey Gall. Like, this is not even normal. These guys are in the same weight class. Mike Perry has the strength of a middleweight compared to Mickey Gall, you know? And that showed for the top control that Mike Perry was able to sustain for the entire ground exchanges. So it was a great performance for Mike Perry. The first round wasn't the best, but then as the fight started playing out, you start to see what Mike Perry was actually trying to do. And his corner worked. All he needed was his girlfriend, man, and maybe that's the new meta. Maybe that's the new thing to go by. All the fighters should just get their wives and girlfriends there, and that's it. Maybe some emotional support would be helpful there. She didn't say too much either, so she knew when to say things and when not to say, and that's what a lot of even coaches don't understand. Sometimes the bad advice can make it worse than no advice. So I like it. It was pretty cool. And who these two should be fighting next? Mike Perry's that guy right outside the top 15. He's with the fighters like Nico Price, Abdulrazak Alhassan, Warley Alves, Brian Barberina, you know, Randy Brown, Bilal Muhammad, you know, these killers outside the top 15 of the welterweight division. They might have the strongest outside top 15 fighters in the entire UFC, but he's one of those guys. So 1 or 2 wins and he gets to fight a top 15 fighter. The one I like to see him versus Abdulrazak Alhassan or Nico Price, because both of those will be vicious fights. Back and forth, explosive, power punching the entire way, and someone's gonna get finished 100%. I like to see Abdulrazak Alhassan actually versus Mike Perry. I like to see that a little bit more. And as for Mickey Gall, this isn't good for him. He's 4-3 in the UFC right now. He has 3 losses, 4 wins, and he has exchanged wins and losses in his last 6 fights. And as you do know, he got into the UFC fighting Mike Jackson and CM Punk after his very first professional fight. So I say keep him for one more fight. I already see a lot of people saying that he shouldn't be in the UFC right now. He's too inexperienced. But to be honest, I don't know who he could fight. When I look through the roster of the welterweight division, it just doesn't seem good for him for the majority of these guys. They're all either too experienced, too strong in areas. Nothing really seems that competitive for him, to be honest, at this point. Because if you look at the guys he beat, Salim Tuhari, who was already coming off 2 losses in a row and never won a UFC fight. He beat George Sullivan, who at that point was also coming off a 2-loss skid. And before that, he beat Sage Northcutt, CM Punk, and Mike Jackson, right? So George Sullivan is for sure like the most experienced guy he's ever fought, and maybe he can fight like an Eric Koch if he's still competing these days. I don't even know if he is. Someone long in the tooth like that, I can see that going for him. Maurice Green had a good submission win against John Vellante. It was a pretty weird fight back and forth with a weird submission to end it. Jean Vellante was very slow like usual, not engaging too much, taking a lot of kicks. Even though Jean Vellante was landing a lot of leg kicks, I like to see him a little bit more active. And Maurice Green got a arm triangle from the bottom, which you don't normally see people tap out to. It's usually just to control the posture. We did see Aljamain Sterling submit to Kim Mizugaki with it, but it's a very rare submission to ever see. It's very rare for someone to actually defeat someone with this. And they were a bit different because Sterling had the guard, or tight guard around Mizugaki, while Jean Vellante was in half guard on top, could have probably gotten to full mount if he wanted to, as the guard was completely open from Maurice Green. It just seemed like Vellante was kind of laying on top of him. I don't know, it was weird. It was a very good emotional win for Maurice Green. Brandon Allen and Kyle Dawkins, I didn't see the majority of the fight. I saw part of the second round and the entire third round. I saw Brian Allen kind of put it on Dawkins. There was some really good ground exchanges, but it seemed like Allen was a little bit more explosive, a little bit more athletic in most areas of the fight. Takashi Sato with that one punch, one hitter quitter on Jason Witt, who took the fight on super short notice. So nothing to take away from Jason Witt, taking a hard fight against Takashi Sato, who's known for his knockout power, and he got finished in 48 seconds with one big straight. I was really looking forward to Takashi Sato versus Ramiz Brahimaj, but it was a good performance for Takashi Sato. I missed the Sean Woodson versus Julian Erosa fight. I did see Woodson putting it on Erosa and drop him at one point. Both these guys are super long, but the way Julian Erosa was able to get in that Darce choke when Sean was standing up from the takedown was super slick, super quick, got it to the ground, and I was very shocked. I mean, it looked like Sean Woodson was probably going to win the fight, but I did miss some moments of it, so maybe Julian Erosa was doing better than I thought. And let's be honest, the real reason Sean Woodson lost is because he came out to 6'9". What about Louise Pena versus Kamaru? Come on, dude. Twice. Kamaru put on 2 of some of the biggest upsets in UFC history, back to back. Not only beats Devontae Smith, knocks out Devontae Smith in the first round. Many people thought that's how Devontae Smith would defeat him. And now he submits Luis Pena? Yeah, I understand it was a closer fight than a lot of people expected. I didn't know Luis Pena went to ATT. Maybe that might not have been as good as him training at AK, where his wrestling could have been a lot more rewarded. It didn't even matter. Kamaru submitted him. Submitted Luis Pena. Do you know what the odds were for Kamaru getting a submission on Luis Pena? It was a plus 2,700. That is so crazy. Never would I have ever expected Kamaru to submit Luis Pena. Never. I don't think anybody would ever expect that. That is why we love MMA. That is why it's so unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. You never know how fights are going to play out, and you never know how they're going to finish, even if it's coming back from, let's say, some fighter dominating the other. You never know. It's MMA. There's so many ways to win. There's so many holes because of that, and there's so many opportunities for fighters to win, even if they're down like 4 rounds out of the 5, you know? And I loved the guillotine he pulled off. That is my personal favorite guillotine to go for, the high elbow guillotine. I love that guillotine. It's so tight, especially when you have long arms. I'm 5'11" with a 74-inch reach. I don't have the widest shoulders. I have really long arms. When you have long arms like Kamaru or like a Tony Ferguson or something, you get that high elbow guillotine. It feels so tight. It always seems like you're going to get the tap on them. And that was as Luis Pena was working for the single leg, right? He kind of just pushed it up, but he was doing it very nonchalantly and just exposed his neck right inside that third round, man. I'm very impressed with Kamaru. He is a prospect of the lightweight division for sure. He came into the UFC on short notice. When he fought Devontae Smith, he fought his friend, and he came in with motivation. Another kind of motivation where he has a family, he's raising his kids, and he's fighting for them. That's what he came into the UFC with. It's not like that became a new thing for him when he was inside the UFC, which can change your motivation. It's usually in the positive, but sometimes it can be in the negative as well, where now you're not just thinking about yourself. He came into this with that kind of motivation, and it's very positive in his career, and it's making everything work. 100% that deserves the performance of the night. 100%. I am so impressed with the guy. So impressed. His striking is something to be very worried about, and now his submission ability. This guy's a finishing machine, man. Tanner Bolster, putting the hands on Felipe Lins. That combination was so quick for a heavyweight. Tanner Boser is a small heavyweight, and I didn't expect him to explode the way he did, because when you see Tanner Boser usually fight, he's kind of just gauging around, he's trying to move around the cage and look for some opportunities, but he's usually, landing leg kicks, jabs. He's not exploding like that. He landed that big right overhand. I didn't think he knew it would land the way he did, but once he landed, he saw Felipe start to stumble forward. He circled around and got the profile vision without any feints, which showed that Felipe Lins was just out of it, right? Because you don't just walk forward and let the guy get around you with no feints, You kind of just follow them instinctively or just naturally. And he didn't do that. He just walked forward, Tanner Boser circled around him, and just let the hands go until it was over. He was out cold. So that was a great performance for Tanner Boser, and he may be a prospect of the heavyweight division that we have to see. We need these prospects. We need these guys who can go and deliver in fights like this. And I did miss the rest of the fights. I really have to look at the Kay Hansen versus Jinh Yu Fry fight. But my next video is going to be the breakdown of Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker. It's going to take me a bit of time to break that one down because there's a lot that went on. Expect it by tomorrow night, so can't wait to get that out for you guys. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And if you did, make sure you hit a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. And also, if you guys see that join button next to the subscribe button, that's to join to become a member of the channel. You become one of the Weasel gang. You get some vintage older breakdowns that maybe you have never seen before. I upload every single week, so if you become a member, you'll be able to see those. And that also goes for my Patreon. It's pretty much the same. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.